Hello friends, Mandar here. I'm back with another video. Today's video is about the summary of the interview with Charlie. So for July Visa Bulletin, they were supposed to have that interview 2 weeks back on the Juneteenth day, but it was a holiday. So they had this interview today. So I just saw this interview and it is about 35 to 40 minutes and I will concise it down to about 10 to 12 minutes for you. There are about 25 important questions that were asked specifically from people who had posted the questions online, and there are some interesting things that I would like to point out. So watch this video until the end and let's get started. If you are here for the first time, welcome. My name is Mandar and I make immigration related videos for US and Canada. I'm not an immigration lawyer, so anything that I say on this video or on my channel is for information purpose only. And for your specific immigration needs, before you take any action, you should hire a competent immigration lawyer. Now, every month since last couple of months, there has been an interview conducted by the Department of State with Charlie Oppenheim, who is in charge of the person who is responsible for posting these visa bulletin information every month for us. So people who are in the backlog countries are specifically interested in this visa bulletin, and these dates and charts come from Charlie's department. So let's look at the questions that were asked to him today, and I'll try to summarize them in the most simplistic way. So the first question was for family-based category. Will the dates continue to progress throughout the end of this year, fiscal year, until September? And then the answer was yes. For most of the categories, specifically Mexico has been progressing a lot, but Philippines is held a little bit. But in summary, most of the dates for family-based preference category are expected to move in a modest way until the end of the year. Now there was another question about F4 category, whether all the applications who has the priority date current will be processed, and the answer was probably no, because by the time somebody is documentarily complete and applied for an interview, the dates may retrogress. So the answer was no, but most of them should be processed. Now the third question was, do you expect the EB dates to retrogress anytime in the future? The answer was no. No retrogression in the foreseeable future. As I mentioned in my previous video, the dates are not expected to retrogress up until at least second or third quarter of next year. We might see a slowdown after that. But and then the other aspect of it was how much they will progress until September is to be seen. That's not known yet. Again, he answered the same question for the family-based category. They are not expecting any retrogression. The dates will advance, in fact, and final action dates are supposed to reach the filing dates chart by the end of this fiscal year. Now, there was a common question: what does it mean when the date is current in final action date chart? What it sees is there are sufficient number of visas available for the demand. So say for instance the demand is 1000, and if there are more number of visas, at least 1000 or more visas available, then every person who is in that stage gets a visa number, and that's what means that the date is current. So any person that has a date on or prior to that particular date in the final action chart will have a visa number assigned. So that's what it means by date being current. So there was a question asked, when do you expect all the consulates to be open and fully functional at the levels, pre-pandemic levels? Charlie couldn't answer that precisely, and rightfully so, because it depends on several different regions and several different factors in that region, how effectively they can reopen the consulates to full processing. He did, however, mention that monitor the travel.state.gov website, as they would have the most accurate information on this. Now, he was also asked, why don't they publish the processing times or wait times for adjustment of status? And then the answer was because of this COVID situation, the processing capability is not fully known. So there are no updates for the processing wait times for 2021. There was a common question that was asked while determining the numbers for annual limits, are only the primary applicants considered or also their dependents are counted? And the answer was yes, the dependents are also counted for the visa numbers. If the family is bigger, they use up those many number of visas depending on the size of the family basically. So instead of one visa number, they will be using 3, 4 or 5, whatever the size of the family is. There was a question about EB5 China, if those dates will move. The answer was no, they will not move until September. There might be some movement October onwards. Now there was an interesting question. Why would the State Department request documents from a person whose date is not current, whose priority date is not current? So the reason that they do is they want to start preparing the applications who are closer to getting their priority dates current, because they don't want to waste the time once the priority date becomes current. So if they feel that an application is approaching a certain date or a certain time frame, they would start requesting RFEs from you for any kind of documentation. This typically also applies for consular processing, because they are more proactive in giving out these letters, but Charlie did not specify whether that was applicable only to consulates or to adjustment of status as well. So even if somebody does not have the date current, they may still get an RFE for preparing them to complete their documentation to be processed as soon as their date becomes current. Now there is another interesting question. Somebody asks, will the final action dates reach the filing date chart by the end of the year? And Charlie's answer was kind of surprising, because he said for the most part the date have already been reached. Now we know that for EB1, EB2 and EB3 category for India specifically, the dates have not been reached, but he did allude that some dates have already been reached. Maybe he was referring to some other categories of visa. But then he also went on to say, because the dates were reached, the filing date chart dates can also progress towards the end of the year. And when they progress, those dates will be met only after 8 to 12 months after the dates are changed. So say for instance, EB3 dates we saw, they were changed from 1st of January 2014 to 1st of February 2014. Now it's a little bit unclear for me whether the February 1st 2014 date will be reached in final action date chart by September, or after 8 to 12 months from when it was changed, which was last month. So some dates may not reach the filing date chart date until next fiscal year. That's what Charlie explained. I thought all the dates have to meet the final action date chart in that particular year, but Charlie is saying if they move the dates in the filing dates chart towards the end of the year, it will still take them another 8 to 12 months to for final action date chart to reach that date. So what this tells me is EB3 date for final action date chart might not reach February 1st 2014, and that's quite possible. It is a little bit disappointing, because we were under the impression that those dates will be met, but now it appears that there will be, as I predicted in my last video, there will be a lot of visa wastage and those dates may not be reached. There was another question, the Department of State reach out to the candidates whose date is still not current for requesting for other documentation, and the answer is yes. This is to kind of create a demand and make those documentarily completed applications ready to be processed as soon as the dates become current. This also helps Charlie's department to kind of determine the final action date chart, because some people who are very close to getting their priority date current, if they are documentarily complete by addressing the RFEs, they will immediately be assigned a visa number as soon as their priority date becomes current. So typically what I understood from Charlie is the process is NVC will contact the applicants whose dates are closer to getting current for documentarily evidence. Then they will collect that, and then they will give that information to Charlie's department. And once the priority date for that documentarily completed applicant becomes current, a visa number is immediately assigned to their case. So this is also, and he also cautioned that don't wait until your priority date becomes current. As soon as you get an RFE, you proactively submit all your documentation to USCIS. There was a specific question around, will EB2 reach July 2012 priority date in October? Charlie wasn't able to commit to that, but he did say that FY22 employment limit will be all-time high of 290,000 visas will be available. Now it remains to be seen whether they will all be utilized. That's a different question, but at least the visa numbers will be available. From what we have seen from this current fiscal year, out of the 262,000 visa numbers, very less were processed in the initial first two quarters, and we are expecting speedier processing in the next 2 quarters, the current quarter and the last quarter, but that would still not be enough to use up all the visa numbers. As per my previous video, I had predicted about 100,000 visas will be unused from fiscal year 2021. There were questions regarding how is the priority date determined. It's basically based on the number of so the information that they get from NVC about the documentarily completed number of applicants that is reported to Charlie's department. So they take that into consideration. They take annual limit into consideration, how it should be distributed across the 12 months, and that kind of becomes a base for determining the priority dates charts for filing date chart and final action date chart. He also went on to say usually the priority dates can change in the initial number of years. They rapidly progress from October to say June, but then July, August and September the progression kind of stalls a little bit. It becomes very slow, if not it has a possibility of a retrogression as well. So they kind of move the dates very aggressively in the first 2 or 3 quarters of the year just to create that demand. And then this is analogous to the airport scenario that I mentioned. They try to get as many people as possible into the airport, and then they have airplanes lined up, so 1 airplane per month. And as they get closer and closer towards the end of the year, if they have too many people still left over in the airport in the process of I-485, then they could retrogress the dates towards the end of the year, which means from July, August and September, the dates are have the potential to retrogress if they have been advanced too aggressively in the beginning of the year. Again, there was a question whether USCIS will progress enough cases in the last couple of months, and the answer was yes. They are doing their best in their limited capacity. They are still working at the same man hours, and they don't have any extra staff, but they have almost double the processing volume compared to a typical year. This year they have almost 262,000 visas available to be processed, but even given that, Charlie doesn't think that they will be able to utilize all those 262,000, and my prediction is they will be falling a lot short of that. Another interesting question: does documentarily qualified include medical? The answer is yes and no. The yes in the sense, if you are documentarily completed including medical, and if your priority date remains current until your case is adjudicated, then it's all good and fine. But for unfortunately, if the priority date retrogresses before your case is adjudicated, then it can take up a few more months for the date to become current again. In that meantime, your previous medical record may not be valid because there is a validity period for that medical I-693 form. So you might have to submit another I-693, which is a medical records form to USCIS. Now there was a question on how much will be the visa wastage for EB category this year. Charlie wasn't particularly able to answer that, but he did say that there will be a significant visa wastage. Check out my previous video, that will give you some idea on what my thoughts are regarding how many number of visas might be wasted this year. Now there was an interesting question about the downgrade petitions. Will the visa numbers be double counted for people who have EB2 as well as EB3 in progress? Now from my perspective, what I would say is no. The answer is no. This is because the visa number is only assigned once your case is documentarily complete. So if you progress far enough in the final stage with your previous EB2 application, and if your visa number was assigned to that visa number will hold. But if you downgrade the petition and now you have EB3, and if it has not progressed to the same stage as EB2 where there might be a reconciliation done, then you might still not be assigned a visa number for your EB3 case. So in that case, even if you have 2 applications, you will still have 1 visa number pending. And now if you say, for instance, if you have 2 applications which are at the same progress, in terms of progress, there will be a point where they will do a reconciliation, where they will remove visa number from one application and give it to another. Remember, these are 2 different categories, so these visa numbers have to come from different quotas. So it won't be like they will be double allocated for a same individual. There was an interesting question. If USCIS does not process the cases at the rate to reflect the moment to meet final action date, then what is the significance of your department's work? That Charlie took a moment to answer this question, but he did say that he does have a meeting and he does get the data from several different departments on a monthly basis, and they do look at all these data. So data comes from USCIS, from NVC, from consulates, all these different areas, and Charlie then takes all these numbers and then comes up with the final action date chart and filing date chart. Although they may not represent the speed at which USCIS is actually processing the cases, it kind of gives you still gives you an indicator of how long your case might take until it's approved. Then there was a question about, is there a way for you to know if your case is documentarily completed? And the answer was yes. Typically in the NVC site, you can check the status of your documentation if it's completed. So, but he did say that he cannot comment on the USCIS process complete on the adjustment of status cases. It's more for the consular processing cases. There was a question, if you have your I-140 still pending and if your priority date becomes current, then what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. It's basically your I-485 case does not get processed until your I-140 is approved. There was a question on the child age relief, and then he talked about the Child Status Protection Act. You might want to check my video on that particular topic. By the way, there is a relief act coming in. It might be brought to the House next week. I'm going to make a video on that as well, so watch out on my channel. There was an interesting question, why can we get an EB I-485 inventory on a monthly basis? And Charlie said that they don't publish it and they don't have any information on what gets published on the USCIS numbers. So the numbers that we saw on the USCIS website, Charlie doesn't use those numbers. I guess he gets a separate report from USCIS based upon which he does his charts. So I'm a little worried about that, but I'm still assuming that those numbers would match what Charlie gets from USCIS as well. But regardless, the processing volumes you saw, there were far less cases processed until end of Q2. But even if they double the rate of processing for the remaining quarters as we expect, they will still fall short of completely using all the visa numbers for this particular year. So that's really what was covered in today's interview with Charlie. Surprising revelations that were made. I hope you got some value out of the content of this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.